Welcome to Weird Games and Weirder People, a podcast about role-playing games and the weird, wonderful people behind them.
Hello, wonderful weirdos. This is Diogo Nogueira, and today's guest is a very special guest. He's a friend of mine, a game designer, an educator, a podcast who works with kids and creativity and has a lot of games on his belt. His name is Michael Lowe. But before we get into that, I have a few announcements. The DO Awards 2024, which is a Indie Tabletop Role-Playing Game Awards, is opening submissions on April 1st. So if you made some stuff, you're a creator, send them your stuff your ways. We're gonna have links on the show notes, so check it out. And we have a few reviews I'd like to read to you. One from Papa Joy Mambo from Canada, who says, "This is a great show. Finding an RPG show that's interesting because it isn't only about RPGs." And one from Lex Mandrake, who we also interviewed here a couple of episodes ago, which says it's a wonderfully weird. Diogo's insight and passion is complemented by a fantastic choice of guests. Together, they're able to go in directions most RPG podcasts don't, offering a really unique experience. I agree, this is a weird show. We have a weirdly fun guest, and if you like the show, please subscribe to the show. We have wherever you listen to the podcast, leave us a review like the ones I read here. I can read it online and support the show however you see fit. Share it for friends. But now talking about Michael Lowe again, we talk about his journey, how the pandemic made him start doing things differently, how he joins education with art, with RPG, with writing, how partners in crimes with him, like collaborators, helped him create so many great things, how he gets inspired every day by his students, how he grows as he teaches, how he learns as he makes more games and help others do the same. I've always inspired by the conversations we had. This is a great episode, so listen up and let's get weird with Michael Lowe. Hey Michael, welcome to Weird Games and Weirder People. I'm so happy to have you here. We already kind of started chatting, and I was like, we're gonna miss so much good stuff. So let's just start recording because we were saying like we're all excited to meet people here and talk about the stuff that we love. Like we love games, we love creativity, we love art, and we love sharing these weird passions that we have, and that's when we create this incredible connections and friendships, and it's kind of what the podcast is. So welcome, Michael. And I know we haven't been chatting online
Stoked
for a
to
while.
Get weird with you. Stoked to get weird with you.
Yeah, it's great to see you in face, even through a glass. But I'm excited to have the chat. So how have you been, my friend?
Oh wow. I'm good. I have absolutely no complaints and lots of weird stuff that I'm deeply engaged in right now. So I'm feeling just excited about I've there's a lot going on in my family's life, good things, like exciting things, and a lot going on professionally. So it feels exciting.
Yeah.
And
awesome.
lots of weird projects. Lots.
Yeah. Great. I'm always been following your work. Which has a lot to do with creativity, with writing, with education, and being approachable, and even for kids, and it's very fascinating. And I had a game that worked on a little bit with that too, called Lost in the Fantasy World, and I think we talked a little bit about that too once, and I've been admiring your work for a while. So what I'd like to ask you for the wonderful readers out there is like, who is Michael Lowe? What is that you do? And if you can share just a small word detail about who you are. And
Oh wow, I have too many weird things. Like I guess I'm too weird to contain in one line of weirdness. But let me see. Yeah, so I make games. I'm also a curriculum designer. And I'm also a teacher. So I was in the classroom for 20 plus years. I've been making games since I realized I could do that, which was about, I think I was 11. And I think I only started really figuring out how to get my games into other people's hands during the pandemic. Now I primarily teach online. I teach writing classes where half the class is us reading the new stories that contribute to the setting, that kids have written together in an online novel that they compose together, and the other half is playing through adventures in that world to be surprised and delighted. I think role-playing games do this wonderful thing that I haven't found really anything else that allows you to do the same thing, which is they allow you to both have the experience of being a reader, those moments of high drama when you don't know what's going to happen to the character. I mean, you know, they're probably not going to die because the author's not going to do that at this point in the novel, but you care, you know, and you're sort of on the edge of your seat as the dice hit the table. That's the same feeling you get when you're deep in a novel and immersed in a character's world and you feel for them. You feel like you are them. But they also allow you to do this other lovely thing, which is to sort of leap out of character mode and step aside and say, wait, okay, so as an author, like I get it, as the character, I want things to go well, but as an author, maybe I actually want things to go horribly wrong because it would be amazing for the story if everything went wrong here. And so that's a huge avenue for a teacher to be able to help kids, especially kids who struggle with reading and writing, have that transitional experience where those two skills are connected with the thrill of being part of a crew of peers who are all doing the same thing together and getting excited about each other's work. So that's what I do at luckoflegends.com. I also run Stories RPG, which is a podcast and also a game. The podcast has, good Lord, just so many arcs now. We've got a fantasy arc, Starsworn, and there's a play-at-home game that runs a parallel arc to the podcast, so you can listen to the story and also play along at home. Same thing with Giga City Guardians, which is our 4-color superheroic action series, which gets into my 90s X-Men like mutants for mutant rebellion feels. I'm really proud of the game. I feel like I channeled. My goal was I wanted it to look like a Trapper Keeper had a baby with my X-Men comics from the 90s. And I feel like between my artist being amazing, Rob Hebert, nerdypapergames.com, he's amazing. And you know, just really channeling a lot of like pink, blue, and yellow. I feel like I nailed it. But yeah, in addition to Giga City Guardians, we got Partners in Grime, which is the Goblin one. We've got Luna Uni, which is the sci-fi one. And each of these comes with a play-at-home game that you can play with zero prep. You just pick it up and each page tells you what to do, and it gets you into the storytelling game passion. But yeah, and Luna Uni also has a teacher's guide. So that's being used in classrooms. I've got, I think, about 5 different teachers right now. And I just had a literacy coach who's actually the parent of a couple of my students online who is going to be employing this as a full-time writing curriculum. So a lot going on, but all cool stuff. And yeah, so that's me and that's what I do. And then one weird thing about me, gosh, I feel like all those things are weird already. I have so many hobbies that I really can't even begin to like list them. I guess like I'm standing here next to, let's see, I'm just going to open the drawer. This is a tiny music toy that is like a rhythm and noise generator. I have a weird habit of collecting things that are kind of like bizarre, amazing, easy to use music generation tools. I also make
so it's very
make
everything
cigar
related to music, or
well, no, there's more. So like this is a cigar box guitar I made. I have a uke over there too. I collect cigar boxes. I don't smoke cigars.
Do you play or do you only collect?
Badly. Okay. I can play and sing. I have a lot of very strange instruments. So in my closet, I have a cue chord. I play an auto harp.
Yeah,
I have an
automaton.
Curiosity.
Yeah.
I think I like building a thing. I feel like building a thing gives me agency to figure out how the thing works. And then I feel like because it belongs to me, I have license to play with it. So I'm very bad at like learning other people's things. But if I build an instrument, I'll play it a lot more than an instrument somebody else made. I love things that not only allow for play and facilitate play, but inspire and encourage play. I like things that in their design kind of message to the user, hey, This is for you to mess around and do your own thing with.
Yeah.
You don't have to do anything you don't want to. This is yours. I love
You
that.
don't have to take it so seriously too, right? If it's looks also like handmade and it's kind of more playful, and it's not like, oh,
Yeah.
this costed $500 this
Yeah.
guitar, and they're like, yeah, I'm
like,
not
like,
gonna
I don't really want to
mess
touch
around.
that.
Yeah,
I'm gonna break
I
it. Yeah.
yeah. I
100%.
remember in college, like going to buy paper in art
Yeah.
school, like to draw, and
Oh gosh.
and you buy those expensive papers, like professional paper, and you store them, and you never use them,
Exactly.
and you find like
It's the
20
worst.
years later, you find the paper there, and I'm like,
Yup.
and now I'm using all the paper I didn't use in college. I'm not.
But meanwhile, right now, because you
Yeah.
feel the agency now, but like if you look at your old stuff,
Yeah.
all your best doodles, all your best sketches, guaranteed to be on some weird lined paper where you were doing
Yeah.
something else and you just got into a weird thing in the corner because you felt like you were free to do that.
Yeah.
That thing, I have that thing, like stickers too, right? You'll get a bunch of stickers. Like I
And you
get
store
stickers from
them,
my
and
project.
you don't use them. Yeah.
And this is why I've been shamelessly, as an adult now, I'm like channeling. There's Luna Uni. That's the logo. Literally
Yeah.
everything I own
I'm putting it on my
has all my artists, like all my artists'
stuff
gear
back
on
there.
it. It's all
Yeah.
everywhere. So yeah, I'm 100% with you. I feel like this is one of the brilliant things about age. You stop taking yourself so seriously after a point.
Yeah.
I think you get the
Yeah.
freedom to do childhood right if you're remembering what childhood was like. You have a
Yeah.
lot of
And
fears in childhood, and that's the hardest thing. Like as a teacher, I feel like that's almost half my job, is encouraging kids to be excited, not afraid. Don't worry about failing. Worry about not doing
Yeah.
fun stuff. In fact, don't worry at all. Figure out what you love and chase after it. Let me help you do that, and let me give you like all the agency you need and all the permission you need to do that.
Yeah. That's hard. I mean, with my son, that's really something we always trying to work on. Is that this fear of failing and of doing well. Like we play a
Yeah.
game, and if he fails, if he doesn't win, he doesn't want to
Yep.
play anymore.
Yep,
You know.
exactly. Well, and that's interesting because you just got into the question of game design, and it's also, for me, curriculum design. I think first of all, school's a game. It's exactly like every other game. It has arbitrary points. It has refs. It has rules.
Yeah. The way we arrange it in life is like I always have to score points and have all these checkpoints that I have to mark and keep
Yep.
going. And then,
But we're so bad at it. We've designed our games so badly. And that's so example, the
Yeah.
classroom, right? What's the one thing you need kids to do in order to learn? Fail. Because that's the
Yeah.
only way you learn things, is you have to
Yeah.
mess up. You have to do things, and it's
That's
going to be
true.
messy because you won't be able to succeed the first 18 times you do a thing. And you'll only
Yeah.
be able to understand the finer points, right? The really cool stuff only becomes clear after you've done it. They say the average skill gets learned in 27 exposures. So the idea that, even the way that they write this game for the refs, right? Like in American classrooms, they'll say, all right, you have to have an exit ticket for your 45-minute classroom so that you can prove that your students learned something and could regurgitate it within 45 minutes of being exposed to it. And anybody who knows anything about learning, you're like, what are you doing? That's insane. That makes absolutely no sense. The kids need to play around
Yeah.
with it, mess with it. They're going to figure it out at different times. It's not linear. Learning comes in fits and starts and weird squiggles.
Yeah.
And you
people
only
learn in different rates and different ways.
Yes, absolutely. And you never know when a particular thing is going to work or not work. So we designed this system where they literally are terrified of failing. So they don't want to try anything until they're sure they're going to do well at it, which means you end up as a teacher having to break everything down into incredibly minuscule, conceptually boring, procedural steps that are guaranteed wins, which of course the kids don't find engaging. So, it's sort of designing a game with rules that literally contradict the purpose of the game's function, right? This is what you're designing for. And you've created a game with rules that force you to do the opposite. So utter madness. And I think a lot of my work with using story games to help create play spaces for students where writing is play, where they're writing stories for each other, and because they're excited to see what happens in the world when they write it. That is where I see such huge wins. I mean, I don't know, in the 5th grade classroom, I have a fifth grade teacher who he's now in his second year using Luna Uni with his students. And in his first year, in the first 3 months of teaching it to a bunch of fifth graders, and this is a guy who'd never run a story game in his life. He'd never played a role-playing game, ever. His first game ever, he ran for 20 fifth graders using my game, which was super exciting. But he got 35% gains, both median and mean, for all of his students. So huge leaps. Like, and it's simply because they felt like they were in control and there was a reason they wanted to do it. So it seems like such a simple thing, but design matters so much, you know?
Yeah, and can really teach, because games are really, reading about game design now. I know you're an educator, and you said you have been making games since you were 11, and
Yeah.
also that was something I asked you, like, how long have you been studying making games to be able to make these decisions more consciously? Because I've been making games. I think every every game master in a way is
Yeah.
a game designer.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
they're learning their craft, and I know a lot of people have critics or regards against the legendary like golden rule or zero rule that the GM can modify the game and etc. And because they say it's an excuse of the game designer, etc. But I think that's up to
I'm
us.
sorry,
Hey,
I don't know these people, but okay. If some people say that, that's their
yeah.
choice. You know, I
You
disagree.
can make this too. You can play with this. You can create your own stuff. I think that's a very empowering rule in
Can
a
I tell
way.
you? That's actually my favorite thing about D&D, which I'm not a huge fan of. My favorite thing about D&D is I actually think it's kind of brilliant in that it has such an obstreperous and like problematic
Yeah.
system that you're kind of forced to start designing like every
Yeah.
single person who plays that
Yeah.
game. And it's the funniest thing because anytime you start talking about design, somebody who's played D&D in the room is like, well, you can do that with D&D. And let me tell you why D&D is so great. And I always stop them. I say, hold on. There's two games here. There's the game that is in the book, the one that's in the rules,
Yeah.
the one that's written down. And then there's the game you were playing. I'm glad you had a wonderful, passionate experience with the game you were playing. But every time somebody goes, D&D is not like that because I played a whole game and we didn't even roll dice once. I was like, yes, and the game you played was yours. You made that game
Yeah.
up. Well done,
It's like
you.
it's like my kid. Like he loves Minecraft.
Yeah.
So he wants to play everything in Minecraft. He wants to play
Yeah.
Minecraft Avatar. He wants to
Yep.
play Minecraft Star Wars. Let's play a
Yeah.
Star Wars game. No, I want to play Minecraft Star Wars. Yeah, it is fun, but it's not the same thing, you know?
It's not.
Yeah,
Dude,
yeah. It's
okay. Can I get real deep? Because like talking
sure,
about
yeah.
playing
I would love,
Minecraft
yeah.
Avatar and Minecraft, like Star Wars, right? The idea that these things should translate. I have a project that I'm unbelievably obsessed with it, and I think it's because that kind of play, that kids do.
Mm-hmm.
And you asked me the question, you're like, how did you learn to design the little bits? And I think the answer is you don't know right away, and you don't even know as you're going, as you're getting deeper into any passionate creative project, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
realizing other things that you want to work with or tweak, other ways that you can build things to try to create the
Mm-hmm.
experience you want to have happen at the table, at least in the game design world. And I just had a couple of breakthroughs that I was like, oh my gosh, like this changes everything, and got super nerdy. And wow, that's really loud. My phone just started ringing in my ear on my apologies.
We
And
didn't
I could,
hear. I didn't hear
yeah,
anything, so
which is
that's great.
great, which
Yeah.
is great. So I want to be careful here when I introduce this, but I have a game and it's called Infinibrix. INFINI and then capital BRIX, Infinibrix. And I don't want to say the name, but I think that the most well-designed game outside, I will say the most well-designed game in the world I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna go ahead and say that. Here we go.
Okay.
Is construction blocks. Now, notice I was very careful not to say a particular brand name because I'm not affiliated with
Yeah.
them. But there's a particular
It's
brand.
fantastic. Yeah.
There's Mega Blocks. There's Lego. There's a
Yeah.
bunch of people who make compatible construction blocks. But I love them because they're very simple. If you look at the
Yeah.
pieces and parts, they're very simple. Anybody can pick them up and figure out how they clip together. But they enable you to create your own stories and games and play.
Mm-hmm.
They're infinitely unlimited. They're not like other toys that, sort of remove your creativity and say, this is the game you're supposed to play. This is the
Yeah.
only
No.
way
Yeah.
you can use this figure. So,
Yeah, and I lose the knowledge of that a lot. I say I love RPGs. I love to see RPGs
yeah,
as a box of Legos. Like you buy it,
yes,
you can play it exactly as the box is there. You can put it together and play exactly as it's showing. But you can pull it apart and put it a little bit different or make something completely different. Instead of a spaceship, you can make a tiger. I don't know.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, that modularity, that's something you realize as you get deeper into design. You're like, wait a minute, I like this part of this particular game, and I like this part of this
Yeah.
other game, and you end up doing all these lovely mashups. Anyway, the way this works, and this is why I got really nerdy. I have played a lot of games that use Legos in place of minifigures, like little figures that use
Mm-hmm.
construction blocks. I shouldn't say Legos, construction blocks, because you can use any toys. I've had kids pull out a little plastic dinosaur and be like, "Can this be my
Yeah.
character?" And the answer is yes, yes, that can.
Yes.
So the way that Stories RPG works is you write, basically, if you have a picture of your character, you can write. Sorry, I'm waving this thing around, but you can't see it. I have a video, but it's like a minute and some long, and you don't have to watch it if you don't want. We can like pause and you can watch it if you want. It explains the whole thing really well, though. I'm proud of it. It's nice. I haven't posted it yet. This is like,
Yeah,
we're
if
getting
you have
ready
a
for a
link,
big. I
we can put it
do.
on the show notes. Yeah.
Oh man, I don't know if I'm ready to share it with the world. I
Well,
might just share it with you, and then I'll
okay.
post it
Yeah.
soon. Here, I'll
Yeah.
let me so let me start at the start. Actually, no, I'm going to show you the thing, and then I'll
It
talk
should take a
about it.
couple of weeks to wear this anyway. So
Yeah, of course. And I need to remake it, to be fair, because I want to see share screen.
Do you feel the need to remake your old stuff? Like as you learn more, you look at all the stuff that people still like it.
Constantly.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Constantly.
But I want to make new stuff too. But how can I do everything? It's impossible. Yeah.
No, this is absolutely true. And to be fair, I also have this. Why is my mouse is now not working? Hold on. To be fair, I also am constantly picking up new hobbies, which is a terrible habit of mine. So, like, I have a jacket in my closet that I really badly would like to finish. It's got one sleeve to go, but there's some things that I have to do. So here it is. I don't know if you hear the music, which is horribly loud. Can you see it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So you're writing 7 lines, and they can be any lines you like. Just make sure you have at least one in each color, right? So this is the basic Stories RPG engine. You write a bunch of lines. If you want to deal with a challenge, you leverage those lines. You say, "Here's what my character's going to do, and here are 3 things about them that'll help." Up to 3, and then you roll 3 six-sided dice. Less if you can't find as many lines that will help you, and the high die determines what happens. You get a 6, you get a triumph. You get a 4 or a 5, you get triumph with the trouble. Blades in the dark style, right? 1 to 3, you
Yeah.
failed. There's trouble. But this is where things get brilliant. That's the action block. See the studs? The studs represent the
Mm-hmm.
lines.
I see. Nice.
The dice, literally standard dice, are perfect size to fit within a construction block box like that.
Yeah, very nice. For people that are just listening, it's construction of bricks. Like playful bricks. Each color designated to each kind of an attribute: react, power, tough, and speed. and the dice fit perfectly in each one, and you use small one side pieces to mark kind of how many dice you use for each of them. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's it's
and
very very playful. It's I like very much those new things. I know role playing game is getting online a lot.
yeah,
Uh, but I love games that make them more playful to play outside of screens.
analog, anything that welcomes you
Yeah,
into that analog space. Heck yes.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
any excuse you have to get out of screens, because we work with screens, we
ugh,
get entertainment from screens,
yeah,
we walk with our screens in our pockets
yeah,
all the freaking time. So any excuse I have to get out of this,
yeah.
I think it's healthy.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, the other piece of this, and this is where, like, so that's the starter, the first thing that unlocked the conversion. Because one of my goals in Stories RPG basic design was I want to start with narrative. Tell me what you know about your character. And it doesn't matter
Yeah.
whether that is, this idea, a lot of systems focus you on numbers and also on the idea that you have to rank your abilities in comparison to other characters' abilities, which fundamentally
Yeah.
becomes an action, it's sort of a weird, subtle psychological way to emphasize to kids that, other people may be dumber than you. You may be dumber than other people. You may not be as attractive as other people. You may not be as strong as other people. There's a strange message about ranking of abilities that comes from a lot of those mechanics. So I wanted to start with something that says,
Mhm.
what's narratively interesting about your character? What do you love about it? This includes
Mhm.
weird failures, strange quirks, whatever they are. You can work with those because in a good story, what makes your character powerful narratively is not being big and buff and rough and tough. My classic example is like the Mandalorian is the most boring character in the universe. It's a non-character. He's the absence of personality. I have a
Well,
helmet. I punch people. This is the way.
he has a soft heart for the
No,
kid.
that's
Yeah, well,
I disagree. I will
there's some
fight you.
small things. Yeah, well,
Here's my thing.
yeah.
Ready? If you love the Mandalorian, I watched the whole series. There's three things happening in any good narrative. There's characters.
I love
There's
Bill Burr's character there.
so
It's
there's
really good
characters.
character.
There's
Yes.
plot, and then there's setting. Sorry for the balloons. I don't know why, but my thing does
I
this.
yeah. I don't know
So,
what's it's a configuration of this, but I don't remember where to where to turn
yeah,
it off.
I don't know
You
how to do
know,
it either. It,
yeah.
it does
If
that
you
to me
make
randomly.
gestures, yeah.
Yep,
If you make
exactly. Yeah.
some gestures, it activates some emojis. Yeah.
Right, exactly. But yeah, so characters, plot, and setting, right? And here's my
Yeah.
thing about The Mandalorian. I watched The Mandalorian because that entire show is really it's just about setting. Literally, it's the
It
flashiness
is.
of
Yeah.
the new, and I want to argue their characters are really empty. They're stereotypes. That
Yeah.
Mandalorian character, he is the stereotype
That's
of
Star Wars. Star Wars is stereotypes
no,
from beginning to end.
I'm gonna disagree strongly. I'm gonna say the first three movies and the whole reason they created the genre of sci-fi, because they really they completely transformed sci-fi.
Well,
They
they
made it
created their archetypes them because
well, sure,
nowadays, yeah,
but here's my argument about those archetypes. The reason they worked was they made those characters very human and believable, and the acting and writing was so good that you fell in love with those characters and felt that they were real, even though the world was very strange and different. And they did a lot of things in the world too that were unique, like making all the spaceships and technology look really dirty and messed up so that it looked like it
yeah,
had been around for 30, 40 years, which of course it would be if you were,
yeah.
this measures up with our reality. You get on a plane and you're
I
always
know
aware, you're
it's
like,
not as
this was
good
made in the
as the
70s.
original, but it's still Star Wars for me. I mean,
I
because
agree, but
yeah,
my
yeah,
argument is this is my argument narratively. Ready? My
hmm
argument narratively is the Mandalorian is a cipher, right? This is what in writing, if you talk about a cipher character, the cipher character is a zero with a strike through it. It's the character who isn't really a person. They're just there to be
or
your
projection.
connection,
Yeah,
to the world, and they march through the world, and their purpose is really
yes,
to show you the setting. The Mandalorian I think of as being an utterly boring character. And unfortunately,
That's
there's
why he doesn't show his face.
but that's the problem is so many kids have been raised on narratives where they have these faceless guys who just are
Yeah.
incredible combat machines that they
Yeah.
think that that is cool. And when you try to tell a story about those characters, let me be honest, your story's boring because that character's boring. There's no development, there's no change, there's no real
Yeah.
internality, there's no history, there's no
Mm-hmm.
understanding, there's no personality. And so I wanted a starting system with Stories RPG where personality was never a problem, it was always a strength. If you tell me your person is always chewing bubblegum, that is just as legit as I am the world's strongest man. Literally, those two lines, they can each give you a die. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can figure out a way to use the fact that you always have gum on you, interestingly and narratively, great. But the
Yeah.
reason this got me so excited was how do you make that into a mini game? How do you take those narratively compelling things and turn them into that turn-based back and forth that we all like? It's the board game version. It's the board game half of story gaming. Because a lot of us, we've story gamed so long that we're just pure story. But kids really like the board game thing too. And a lot of adults do too, right? It's fun. There's
Yeah,
tactics.
it's a
There's,
tactile. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a lot of. It's one of the aesthetics of game design is to play with weird dice. That's one of the attractions of DCC RPG, for example, is to have a D7,
yeah,
D16. Yeah,
exactly. It's fun. And I
it's
mean,
not
I
the
always
same
think,
to use a dice generator. You have to have
no,
the D7. Yeah,
it's fun
it's
when you hit the table. I mean, we do the podcast, and when we roll, we use a dice generator, but we do a roll by one person, and we all have to watch it. We have a rule because we want the emotional reaction to happen
yeah,
live. And then I always have to edit in the sound of dice hitting the table because we need it. We want them. We want to hear the dice, man. They're
yeah,
fun. But yeah, I always say like role playing games they're really two things. They're two games that we learned to play when we were 3. And one game is just making up stories together. I'm a dragon. Well, I'm a dragon too. I use fire. I use lightning. Let's fly. Right. And the other game is this game. The game where you take little figures and you bash them against each other and you say, and that's the thing is the mini part, it's that game, right? The bashing your little figures against each other and hollering about who's winning. But yeah, so anyway, I'm obsessed with there's all these other smaller design pieces. So, example, you have those 4 dice determining your reaction, your toughness, your power, and your speed for the round, right?
yeah,
Okay, but that's kind of boring, right? Where's the excitement? Where's the fun special abilities? They unlock on series or same. So if you choose all the same roll, or you choose a sequence 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4,
mm-hmm.
5, 3, 4, 5, 6, if you get it, you get a special ability, and that allows you to do something exceptional. So maybe you have dash slash, and you'll have a little card that attaches to your sheet that says dash slash on a sequence or series on same or series. You can move twice your move in a straight line and do a power -1 hit against every foe along that line. And so that allows you to have this tactical choice. Do I want to choose a lower number because I got a bunch of 2s, but it'll let me do this cool thing? Like, how many enemies do I gotta like deal with? And I also have gotten excited because I'm looking to do non-combat mini stuff. So the question becomes,
Mm-hmm.
how do you use those same 4 values, right, to play
Mm-hmm.
example, a roller derby style conflict where you're going around and around a track, but you're trying to throw your friends and get somebody into the lead to score
Yeah,
points, right? And the answer is if you have these little cards, you can have a card called skates. And when you're playing the game in one of the realms of Infinibrix, this is very 80s cartoon like Saturday morning, you'll
mm-hmm.
get the skates, and then once you have the skates have special abilities on them that allow you to play this game. So instead of having to learn new rules, you just have a one thing to think about as a kid, and it means you're intuitively able to build your minifig, right? And immediately describe your minifig, so even little kids can pick this up and play this. But then it scaffolds up into more complex tactical play and fun different things. And then, yeah, my
Yeah,
son is obsessed. So he's always making these unbelievably complex, really cool. minifigs. And he's like, this
Very
one will be a
cool.
great
Yeah.
foe. Dude, check this one
Yeah.
out. This one made me think about your art. I
Very
mean,
nice.
just
Yeah.
just very bizarre and elongate. Like Legos can do so much stuff now. Like they're crazy. They're great.
Yeah, yeah. My son makes like incredible ships and robots and very,
Amen.
very nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with construction block play. So I'm over
Yeah.
here making the iconic characters and trying to do mashups between different realms. So like there's there's Princess Barbaria, who looks like a cross between Marie Antoinette and somebody from like, Mad Max Beyond the
Mad
Thunderdome.
Max. Yeah.
Yeah. I have I like his head's falling off.
Michael, uh,
Yeah,
can I
please.
ask you, uh, what is weird for you? How would you define weird, and how do you look that into the work that you do in games and in life in general?
So that's interesting because when you said that, I was like, I think weird is just the absence of self-judgment and worry. Just to
Hmm.
define it very like clearly, it's when you feel truly free to associate things. It's the creative flow state, right? The
Yeah.
most interesting and wonderful things come when people stop stopping themselves, when they really feel free to just associate weird, all sorts of different interesting things in ways that nobody expected. And that's where
Yeah.
creativity comes from. I don't know. We were talking about this when we came in, but like I was thinking that, that's how real friendships, real collaborative, creative, like partnerships too, but also deep friendships. That's how they happen. It's when you get into your weird with somebody and they like your weird.
Yeah.
They get your
And
weird. They're like they're on
yeah.
the same wavelength. They're like, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing." Yes. And that's when you really
Yeah. We can
yeah.
all like drop a little bit of our masks and be who we are, be our weird selves, and talk about the stuff that we love without having to. Yeah, I'm not bored. This
And be more than
normies with
accepted.
our
It's
weird
not
stuff. I
exactly.
don't
It's
know.
not just be accepted though. It's be like it's when somebody sees you're weird
Yeah,
and gets
skinship.
excited about it. Yeah, it's that. Yes, it's kinship. There you go.
Yeah,
Weirdness is kinship. I like that definition. Let's go.
yeah. That's a
That's
great
good.
one. Great slogan too.
Yeah.
Weirdness is skinship. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
love it.
What do you consider weird? I'm kind of curious because I love your art, but in a way, I feel like your art is so familiar. I feel like all of your art and layout, I think one of the reasons your games are so compelling and your designs are so compelling is I look at them and my teenage self is like, yes. Like
Yeah.
I feel my
Well,
entire childhood. I'm like, I know this world. I know this. It's weird and wonderful and strange and bizarre, and it's utterly familiar. I feel a kinship with it.
yeah. I don't know. I think I draw a lot. I always say here and I ask guests too because I feel I always draw a lot from my childhood and from the
Mm,
thing that I would consume when I was a
yeah.
kid because it was kind of my refuge. I had abusive parents and I was weird.
Oh,
I was autistic and I didn't know, so I was kind of an outsider.
yeah.
And so pop culture and comics and cartoons
Yeah.
and was my refuge. Like you said about this kind of power fantasy for boys, like these
Mm-hmm.
faceless things that kind of make them feel empowered, powerful in a way.
Yeah.
And I see your point too. Like they can be damaging too, but sometimes in a world that you are weird, they always saying that you're doing it wrong and everything is
Mm-hmm.
that can be the only place they feel empowered too. So it's a difficult balance, you know.
It's
Eh,
interesting that you say that because I think when talking about power fantasies, I think one element of fantasy for kids that's really important is feeling agency, feeling
yeah,
that ability to make big moves, do big things, do what you want.
yeah,
I think it's strange, and I do have an interesting, like, I have a personal reaction to this. The way in which our culture centers violence as agency is very
yeah,
strange to me Because
It
I've
is.
heard even
Yeah.
educators say, well, you have to let them be violent in games because otherwise you're taking away their agency and you want them to understand that actions have consequences. And my experience as both an educator and a parent is actually quite the opposite. Violence doesn't trouble them because violence has been framed by all of their narratives as the
Yeah.
definition of power and power fantasy, right? Like, I can
Mm-hmm.
change the world by hurting things. And I've found that if you create a world in which, and a narrative expectation that we're going to tell stories in which you get the chance to change the world, you get the chance to build your own planet and people it with whatever kind of life you wish. You get a chance to, if you're a high school student, you get a chance to be the coolest kid in school in Monster High. You don't get to be the coolest kid at Transdimensional High by punching people,
Yeah.
but you
Of
can
course.
create a
No. No.
weird, wild crew of friends. And weirdly, kids don't have any problem with adopting a completely non-violent. Like, I've never had a kid be like, well, but if I can't shoot people, I'm really out of this game. Like, the minute they're like,
Yeah.
I'm like, you guys can
Of
be weird
course.
wild
Yeah.
goblins and prank the heck out of humans. They're all like 100% in, and none of them feel the need for violence. I think it's us. We're the ones who feel the need for violence in our fantasy. And it's very
I
strange
don't
to me that
know.
we haven't realized
I
that.
f- I don't know because really early kids, early boys,
Mhm.
they grab a stick and that's a sword, and they're
Absolutely. Absolutely. But
killing
if you tell
monsters.
them,
You know.
yeah, of course. But I think this is why, and this is really key to me. I think as an adult, framing matters. And the kinds of games we play matter.
Oh yeah.
This idea that if they don't have that opportunity, they're never going to learn like consequences or they're never going to feel agency. That's the only part
No,
that I'm
there's many
confused
different
by.
ways to do that, but I think there are some kids that will be attracted to power fantasies
Of
because
course,
that
I
is
think
how
the
they
key
are.
is
Yeah.
recognizing that the power fantasies can be a lot of different things. I've seen kids who
Yeah.
came in wanting, horrible violence and
Yeah.
ending up there. What's interesting is the really challenging stories for them. The same kid who's like, I want to eat that person. They're playing a dragon. They're like, I'm just going to eat
Yeah.
him. And I'm like, okay, you can try. Like, that same kid, when their
Yeah.
when their character is late to class, they will panic. They will have a meltdown because their character in the game is about to be late to class and encounter the awkwardness of walking into a classroom after the bell. And I think that it's interesting because it's like, okay, you're willing to murder, but being late to
Yeah.
class is horrifying. It's interesting that we frame the idea that murdering is gonna, experiencing what happens as a consequence of violence is gonna teach you more about how to act. It's like, actually,
No. Yeah.
let's do
Not
the thing that's
necessarily. Yeah.
emotionally like fraught for you and let's laugh our way through it. Let's give you the experience of having that awkward moment and being able to be totally cool about it and feeling like, yeah, I don't even care. Like, and also showing you that the consequences may not be so awful or dire because it's a more familiar problem to kids and therefore it's somehow more loaded because, violence has taken on this, I think it's sort of a mythic quality, right? We imagine that myths happen when people hurt each other. And I think it's wonderful when they can realize that it's just as epic if you can make it through that awkward moment where you walk into the classroom and do this, brush it off your shoulder. You're totally
Uh,
cool. You can walk in and, the teacher gives you a stern look and you're like, sorry, had a hard time finding my way here. And then wink at another kid and sit down in the front row. That takes that's a huge emotional learning opportunity and also a huge
yeah.
power fantasy. A lot of kids, when they have their first socially like rewarding moment in a game where other characters are like, yeah, they're they're absolutely just like, wow, I'm special, And of course it's a fantasy
Yeah.
moment, but in the
Yeah.
same way that any kind of victory in a fantasy moment can be very real emotionally, it can be
Yeah.
transformative.
Yeah. Because it feels like we were talking about how true stories feel like the characters.
Yeah.
But something that was reading about is like these emotions we feel like we're watching a movie or reading a book or reading
Mm-hmm.
a comic. It's really more about empathy. Like we feel like the
Yes.
characters because it's about
Yes.
empathy. But in games, it's more about agency. It's you that are doing those things. So the emotions can be a lot deeper, more about pride, or even about feeling guilt about doing something and the consequence you're
Yes.
about this stuff. And
Well, and that's why I think it's interesting whenever people get into conversations about all the wonderful different kinds of safety tools. So I love the X card with kids, partly because it doesn't require me to do negative framing. If we do lines and veils right up front, it gets kids thinking about what they don't want. And that actually can be problematic for kids because instead of making them feel safe, they're
yeah,
they're
they have
they're
to
getting
talk
less
about it
excited.
in a way.
They're
Yeah,
not getting excited for the game. They're thinking about all the things they don't want to have happen.
that's
Whereas if you
true.
do the X card and you give them lots of different ways to X card, and we were talking about digital versus analog earlier. I got to tell you, I teach online, and I've got an approach that it doesn't work as well in person. And I feel guilty almost saying that because I want it to be analog, but there
Yeah,
are things online that are really helpful for kids, and kids are digital now. So there are
yeah,
ways in which it can help them. So, example, they can
we're
DM me.
dinosaurs.
Yeah, they can DM me. They can
Yeah.
literally, without saying anything, without letting anybody else know, they can just say, "Hey, Mr. Lowe, X card on the and then I just remove
Hmm.
it from the narrative. I don't identify who said it. Nobody asks any questions. We're just rolling. And the kid gets a huge sense of agency there, right? They're like, I can stop things. I can modify things. I'm important enough that whatever I say goes. And that's a key thing too. Like as a teacher, I'm constantly in the narrative saying, listen, if the kid's scared of being late, I'll stop and I'll say, okay, look, we can X card this. You don't have to be late to class. We can make you on time. Totally cool to do that. But
Yeah.
as an author, I just want to check in with you. What do you think would be more fun for the story? Do you want to be late and end up having to deal with, because I feel like that would show something about who you are, right? Like, is your character awkward when they're late? Do they play it off and act cool? It'll also send a message to the other characters and give you opportunities to like interact with them. Or do you want to go with you're on time because that is not the way you want to find your way into the story? That's not the way you want to explore your character.
Yeah.
And so it allows them to pick when and how, but it also incentivizes them to think about failures as these fun learning opportunities, which is really central to sort of everything you want a kid to learn. Like, it's okay if you're late. Interesting things are going to happen because of it. It's okay if you did a bad job on that
Yeah.
assignment. You're going to learn a whole bunch of things from it. Messing up is a great way to make your story more compelling. Nobody likes a
Yeah.
character who always wins. That's the other reason I don't like The Mandalorian. Nobody likes a character who always wins. Every time he wins a fight, I'm like, ugh, I snored my way through that fight, dude. I don't care how cool your devices looked. I knew you were
Yeah.
going to win. But yeah, so like I don't know. It's that opportunity to be vulnerable. Maybe that's another good definition for weird. It's being weird together. It's when you celebrate, you're vulnerable and you're celebrated for it. Weirdness is vulnerability, which is when you learn how you can trust people. That's the other reason I love games with kids as this educational device is it invites them to be vulnerable together and then catch each other. So the first time some kid fails a roll and another kid's like, it's okay, I got you. Here, take a couple story points. Or like, can my character help them by blah, blah, blahing? The first kid is like, thank you. And like immediately there's a
Yeah.
bond, and the next time those two
Yeah.
kids are in a situation, they're like, remember last time when his character threw me? Can he throw me up onto the thing because I'm small and he's big? And they'll buy a line for it. Like one of our favorite combo tactics. So and so likes to throw me. I had this in a recent game. There was a big sort of Yeti like character and a small
Yeah.
like dinosauroid hacker character, and he got chucked up onto a spaceship so that he could get to the access panel and hack into the ship and prevent it from taking off because they had an artifact on board that was going to do massive damage to multiple planets. And after that, they both, these two kids looked at each other and they're like, let's buy a line for that, and they added it to their character sheets. Bond, so and so is always chucking me. The other guy was Bond, I'm always chucking so and so, and they used that became like their signature move.
Yeah.
But they
That's
were
great. It is
vulnerable
a
and weird together, and they trusted each other as a result.
yeah, yeah, and I always think about you know weirdness about being
Mm.
authentic and comfortable and
Yeah.
celebrating it now, like these indie games that we love so much. There is
Yeah.
also this big RPG games that everybody plays, but
Mm.
what really fascinates me
Mm.
are the weird small indie games that they make. That's complete weird thing, like a planet made of flesh, like Midlandia,
Yeah.
or
Oh man.
all this weird uh stuff, which is being very vulnerable. Like this indie RPG community is very artistic in a way,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it's criticized about this. Oh, this not very gameable. It's hard to read, but it's weird and it's very artistic because it's very expressive, right?
It
And
invites you to a very particular experience, and it invites you. I mean, let's go back to vulnerability. It's an act of vulnerability as an
yeah,
artist to make a thing that is weird in the way you want it to be weird. So when we make a truly weird game, we're making
yeah,
it and putting it out into the world and being vulnerable and
yeah,
saying, look, if
yeah,
you're the person who gets it, if you're my kin, right? If you're out there and
yeah.
you see this and you're like, oh, that's for
That's obscure.
me.
Yeah,
Yeah, we found each other. Wonderful. Like it's a
yeah,
wonderful, exposure of the self, of the true creative self to the world. And what an act of
yeah,
warmth and vulnerability and attempt to bring people together to create something that isn't innately commercial. And not everybody is going to play, but boy, the people who know, they're going to know. It's
yeah, yeah,
awesome.
yeah. It's kind of a small secret cult. Like yeah, those people that play this game and then like a secret family or
Dude, you
clan.
alone, you're
Yeah,
shorthand, man. If somebody's like, oh yeah, like if they mention OSE or Primal, like people will all be like, yeah, like everybody knows, you
yeah,
you alone have there's a particular corner of the weird wild TTRPG averse that a lot of us have found community in because you've given us a touchstone for it. So thank you.
wow, thank you. That's very very touching, and kind of one of the goals of the podcast is kind of celebrate this weirdness and how each and every
Heck
one of
yeah.
us is different, but the same in a way.
Yeah,
Like
exactly. Yeah. And
yeah,
what a wonderfully, like, I don't know, I think of all the different approaches out there and all the different things, like and the way in which games bleed into each other. That's the other thing that's fun, is references. I like the open game mentality. You can't copyright a
yeah,
mechanic, so everybody technically legally can use your mechanics because you can't copyright a dice mechanic. So as a result, you kind of incentivize this wonderful wide open collaboration where people can take stuff you do
yeah,
and play with it, and you can tell them, please play with this, and
yeah.
say, go rebuild this. And that's
It's
why I love
great.
game
Yeah,
jams and open solicitations where people are like, use this thing, this weird crazy thing I made,
yeah,
and see how far you can take it, do your things with it. And I know,
yeah.
like, I've had oh gosh, Hassan Yongdi, who has Hassan's County. He does like um a podcast where he breaks down different new SRDs. And he's done a bunch of great ones. He did a very strange personal pet passion project, like offbeat system that I built. I built this system I called XD6 SRD, and basically it's based around rolling just as many six-sided dice as possible. In this game, your one stat is your pool of dice. The bigger it is, the more you can do. The smaller it is, the less you can do. And the whole idea is, when you want to do something, you gamble dice. You say, all right, I'm gonna roll 20 dice because I need to get at least 10 successes. And then you're counting up successes to see how big the impact of your move is. And all the weird, special abilities are all about, like, add a free success whenever you're doing this, or you can re-roll fails anytime you're doing that. And
Mhm.
he made this wonderful game called Banner Ships of the Thousand. Oh gosh, I gotta hold on. I gotta look it up. Now I'm feeling guilty because I'm like talking about it, and I'm like, dude, I've forgotten the
Yeah, but
name.
it's hard. I mean, every time, sometimes I wanted to mention something, and it comes
Yeah.
to my head exactly what it is, but I
Yeah.
can't piece the name
We're old,
exactly. It
dude.
drives
We're
me nuts.
old.
Yeah.
I get nervous because I'm like, every time I do that, I'm like, wait, is it happening now? Like, how old am I? Uh-oh. Here, I'm gonna post
Yeah.
this link. It's called Banner Ships. Okay, let me say, here you go. There's the link to the game that he made. Banner Ships of the Thousand Stars. And the game, which I really enjoy it. Originally it was only like I think it was like 23 pages, very colorfully laid out, very playful. But then I did a facing set of like designer notes because I got asked. I think Hassan was one of the people who asked. They were like, "Can we get some designer notes while we're making?" I was like, "Sure." And so I did this like
Hmm.
2-page layout. And XD6 SRD is still free. It's pay what you want. You can get it for free. But basically each page is like, here are the rules. And then on the other page, I'll be like, here's what I was thinking as a designer, and here's some ways you might want to hack it and play with it. And so each
Yeah.
2-page spread is like that. He did this cool thing where like your dice pool, each of them is actually one of your units in this giant ship tactical combat game. So it's a
Nice.
really
Yeah.
cool way of using those dice as conceptually, right? Like each of these is one of your ships. So these
Yeah.
are lives you're losing every time you gamble. And what are you going to do? Can you ever restore your fleet? How? So yeah, anyway. And I love that kind of stuff. Like when he made it, I was like, look what you
Yeah.
did with this thing I made. How did you do that? That's awesome. I
Yeah.
got really re-inspired. So
That's one of the things I love about creativity. It's taking
mm-hmm.
one thing that we imagine using for one purpose
Yup.
and kind of shifting it in around and saying, I can see it in a different way and use it for something else, and it works so well.
Yep.
Uh, it's great.
Yeah, the
You
surprise element. Sorry, go ahead.
no, you mentioned you had a lot of going on work, but you also mentioned in the family. You want to talk a little bit about what's going on in your life. I always ask you who is Michael O outside of the RPG.
Gosh, here's the strange thing. It's all personal stuff because this is actually my full-time job now. So I teach using RPGs and do after-school programs. That's my job. And so that's one of the reasons I get an excuse to talk about it kind of all the time because like
Yeah,
people talk about their work and I'm like I actually like what I do. So I get
yeah,
super
that's
excited.
great. Yeah,
But I have a son. I have a partner. Both of them are very creative people and doing creative stuff all the time. So I mentioned offhandedly that I was currently making my first jacket from a pattern. I totally got into that because my partner, she got into like sewing stuff and like was like, I'm gonna make a jacket. And she made the coolest jacket. And every time she puts it on, I'm like, oh my God, that's the coolest piece ever. And then she gets that extra thing where she gets, like we go out and somebody be like, oh my gosh, I love your jacket. I've never seen a jacket like that. And she's like, oh, this? I made it. And I was like, oh,
yeah.
flex. So I got super nerdy and started sewing only because I got so inspired. When she did that, I was like, oh, you're ridiculous. Like, how can you do this?
Yeah,
She just started making games like 1 year
awesome.
ago.
Yeah,
And she, this is one of those things where I don't know what it's like if you have a partner and what your partner thinks of games. Some people have partners who like they totally get it and they're totally into it. Um, when we met, and for most of our relationship, she's kind of been like, "Yeah, I don't really know what those game things you do are, but that's cool. Like, go ahead, do your thing." And
yeah.
over the pandemic, she wrote an entire game. This was like I think this was 1 year ago, 2 years ago. It's a solo journaling game, and it's got the best pitch ever. It's called Punctured. This guy wakes up in bed after a night he can't quite remember, next to the wife who's not that happy with him, and he has a wound in his abdomen, and he can't figure out where he got it. It's like a needle puncture. And as you play through, it slowly comes to light that men worldwide have been being abducted and impregnated against their will, and are now bringing children to fruition, and there's all these political elements, but you play through journaling as dealing with this as a man who is afraid of people finding out, afraid of the consequences, afraid of the politics surrounding it. Strangely, having to deal with all the feelings that it creates, knowing that there's a life inside you, all of these things. And it's a really good game. So anyway, she's ridiculously creative and ridiculously skilled. She's a research scientist in her day job. And the fact that she's bringing a lot of that to this, yeah, I got really excited when she started. I was like, see, the things you do already are games. You're already creating tools for like clients that, do game stuff. Like, you're already doing this. Anyway, I got very excited when she came into my nerdy world there. So that's my partner, or at least the weird ways in which our ideas overlap. And then my son, obviously I showed you a bunch of his Legos. He's going through a heavy Lego phase. Draws a lot, makes a lot of Legos, writes really funny stick figure. He's 10 now. He's going to be 11.
Okay.
Keep wanting to say he's 11.
Nice.
He's 10. Yeah, it's great. I mean, he's awesome. I'm just like, wow, dude. I don't think I was this together when I was your age. You're so cool. He's playing a lot of guitar lately. He's going to Costa Rica this summer for like a month on his own as part of this big like exchange program. I know we're a little, both his parents were both like, oh, this is going to be amazing for him. Yeah. It's more about us. He's like, yeah, I can't wait to go. And we're like, yeah. So yeah, that's all the stuff that's going on in my world. But yeah, we live in LA. We love it here. I think LA is like a lot of big cities. People don't really understand LA unless they're from here. Like if you go to New York as a tourist, you see only certain things, right? If you go to Tokyo as a tourist, I can remember my first time in Tokyo, I didn't like it. I wasn't a fan. And it wasn't until I went back with my wife, who happens to be from Tokyo, and she was like, here, come with me. And we went to all the cool, weird neighborhoods that I'd never seen and, tourists never know to go to.
Something else,
Yeah. Big cities are like an entire country, right? There's so many different, strange, wonderful things going on, and you don't know them if you're.
Yeah. You can go to New York many, many times over, and every time do completely different things. Like,
if you know the right people, you have to know people too. Like people unlock different sections of the city. You're friends with the right person. You're like, oh man, I didn't even know about this scene. Very cool.
And there's a lot of stuff online too in the RPG community. So if you go to some place, ask around too, and you might get to know.
I'm always finding out just how big our tiny little community is. Like, I feel like we're very siloed, which is weird. You would think that, like, with the way technology works, we'd all be better at finding each other. But I'm always surprised when, I'll stumble on some Kickstarter and I'm like, who is doing this? This is genius. And like, I'll immediately look them up. And of course, they're connected to a constellation of interesting people who I've never met before. And that's always super exciting. And I get really stoked.
It's a small
like,
world.
wow. It is, but it's also strangely large. Like that's the thing is like when I meet somebody who
always discovering new people. Yeah. Like for the podcast, like the list keeps growing and growing of the people I want to invite, because every time I open Twitter, I see something new and like, wow, I've done to interview who did this.
Yep.
And it's incredible.
Yeah, because like there's so many. That's the thing that blows my mind is when I see those projects where I'm like, this is amazing. I've never heard of this person. How do I not know about it? Like, I need to know everything about them. They're amazing, because the weirdness is there. It's the identifying pin. How do I not know them? Because these people are clearly my people. Like, I can see in this project that these are my people. So yeah, totally.
Yeah. Do you have any kind of creative ritual that you engage with before you start working in your writing or in your games or anything, or before you go to do a class? Do you have anything to help you get into the mood and in the stage to do your work?
That's an interesting question. Classes, I feel like that's where I go to be inspired. The very act of going and working with kids, is a re-energizing and recharging my creative batteries process, because they do things and come up with ideas that blow my mind and surprise me and delight me, and I always gain by going and engaging. So I think I get excited before classes, and I don't need to psych myself up or get myself into the zone, because it's that creative weird connection zone that I want to be in, right? For working on my own, I mean, sometimes I want to listen to music, sometimes I don't. But I would say the times when I'm truly creative, I think one of the hardest things to learn as a creative person, and I know there are all these people out there who are like, write this much a day. You just got to sit at your desk and force yourself, and you just got to sit there and write things, and 90% of it will be garbage, but you'll get something. I know people that works for some people. And I
Yeah.
don't want to disrespect anyone's creative process. If that works for you, that's lovely. For me, one of the hardest things to learn has been to trust myself to get there. I won't know when it's going to happen. So, like, I'll be vacuuming, and all of a sudden I will drop the vacuum and run to my book and be like, I've got it. It's all unlocked. And I'll write down, like 5 bullet points.
Really?
And then those are the key
Wow.
points that unlock the next phase of development for the game. So, I was thinking about
How
Infinibrix. That literally happened with Infinibrix. I had a moment that was this weekend. That was Saturday. I I was like vacuuming, and I was just thinking about it in the back of my head, playing
yeah.
with the ideas. And I had this moment, and I had 2 things I didn't know how to do. How do I do advancement? And then how do I do um particular sub games, right? How do I allow it to be easy and modular to have kids not, you're not always hitting things. Sometimes you're throwing a ball and trying to get into a goal. Sometimes it's capture the flag. How do I create those scenarios, but make them quick and easy to run and intuitive? And the answer was, okay, you get 4 cards attached. One of those card spaces has to be open for a piece of gear, which means I can put the modular rules on the card that is the ball. And then when you get the ball stolen, you lose the card, so you can't pass anymore, but you can go and get the person with the ball and you can steal it back. Like it just, and I ran over and wrote it all down. And the hardest thing for me is
But
trusting those
how
moments when I'm
did
not
you
inspired.
write it down as notes, or did you wrote it
Yes.
down like thousands and thousands of words explaining all of this?
No. Just notes, because I know the rest. The thousands of words will come later.
Yeah,
Explaining the whole
that's
thing for other people is a
yeah,
different skill set, right? Like, how do I
yeah,
compose this and communicate it? That's a whole different skill
yeah,
set.
yeah. But
Fortunately,
that's my point. Like
oh,
taking these notes. Yeah, that
oh,
happens all the time. Like I always carrying the phone, always carrying
yeah,
something because I'm doing the dishes and I have an
yeah,
idea and I
yeah.
have to write it down. But what about getting
The
the work,
grind, the
getting
grind.
yeah, the grind? Do you have a routine for this, or
I
is
find the grind. I find the grind is the same for me. I will get inspired to write. I'll be like, ooh, that's the way I want to say it. And then the minute I have that's the way I want to
wow?
say it happen in my head, I have to sit down and write it down, write that, because I
Yeah, I
will
can't
have
do
it.
that. I won't
Uh,
write that way.
I mean,
I have to force myself.
see,
Go sit down.
this is the thing, is I felt like I had to do that for so many years, and it doesn't help me. When I force myself, all I do is stop liking what I'm doing. And if I stop liking what I'm
Uh,
doing, I stop
for
sparking
me,
with it, and I stop getting
it's
excited
different.
about it. Yeah,
For me,
say.
it's different. I hate starting it, but once I start it, I like it. You
Yeah,
know.
okay. I get that. That happens sometimes with
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
Sometimes.
For me, it's
Sometimes
a
the
lot
opposite
like
happens.
this.
I
A
hate it
lot.
when I start it, and then I'm like, ugh. And I always want to avoid that. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, I know what you mean. I have a weird habit. So, like, example, yesterday, I think I wrote 3 pages of narrative explanation. This is like a story about the tiers of stealth, explained as if a mentor were teaching someone how to think about not being seen. And honestly, I just had a moment where I was like, interesting. How would you teach somebody not to be seen? I'm like, well, the first skill is just empathy. Thinking from other people's perspectives. Who's the person they ignore? How do you know how preoccupied someone is? Because the more preoccupied they are, the less investment you have to make in disappearing from their perspective. You can walk right by someone who's preoccupied enough and they'll never pay any attention to you.
Yeah.
And then I was like, what's the next? And then I got all the way up to, I think the final phase is like stuff like smell. You could be hiding utterly quiet in a closet, hoping not to get discovered, but your smell, even if somebody didn't identify that it was your smell that they were detecting, they would know another person was there. Why? They'd sensed you, probably through smell. So anyway, I don't know where this came from. I was like, where is this coming from? But I was like, I got this idea, and I was like, I'm going to write it down. Now, I have no idea if that will ever be useful to me. It may end up in a story I write for a podcast or something else, or it may never, ever be useful, and that's fine.
But how
I put it down because it was there.
Yeah, right. Where do you write that thing down, and how do you organize those notes? Do you use regular notebook? Do you write on your phone?
I am obsessed with putting stickers on everything. So this is the journal where I have, hold on, in the front, it's all, and I wish I could tell you that this was organized, but boy, I'm going to move it this way. This is not organized. There are to-do lists in here. There are voting checklists. There's like paragraphs. There's the occasional weird doodle. I don't know why I drew this person here. It just happened. I find that if I don't treat it playfully and I don't allow myself to just write comfortably, it's not going to happen. But
you separate notebook by project? You know, that was
no. I literally have to dig through old. I have to dig through old notebooks sometimes because I'm like, wait a minute. I feel like I wrote something about this somewhere once. I'm terrible about organization. It's one of the reasons I like writing online and writing on the computer. I give my files these horribly long names, and I do it precisely because I know I'm going to search for it, and I'm going to use one of about 5 different words to search for it. So as long as I have all 5 words in there, I'll find it. So my organization system is I can always find what I'm looking for because I know that I named it long enough that it'll come up. Yeah. So there's my organization system, my terrible one. Yeah.
I'm kind of like that too sometimes, you know. It's hard to find stuff, and then, you know, but I rely on the powerful, you know, search features.
The power of the search feature. That's it. Yeah, no, I don't have any specific mantra or anything, but I do realize with heavy writing, I have a ramp up period. It takes me a good half hour to get into flow state. So I'll fart around at first. You know, I'll sit down to work on a project and like I'll check a couple emails. I'll write up my to-do list again. I'll do a couple of little menial tasks. Eventually I'll get to writing and I'll start kind of looking through and finding where I want to work, and then I'll start playing around with the beginning of something, and then somewhere within the half an hour to hour in mark, I'll forget the world and it'll just start happening. And I'll be deep in going, okay, and just only thinking about where everything goes and how to make it work and exactly what to say, and but that'll happen eventually. I think one of the only tasks that I feel like I can get quickly into flow state on is I really like layout. I love it. I get very nerdy very quickly and very into, okay, 2 pixels over. Okay, wait, no, let me shift that color. Okay, let me try a different layout here. I can quickly start feeling fully engaged, and maybe that's because it's a little more scattered. It feels like you're thinking about different things. Your brain is hopping. It doesn't have to stay on one thing. So I love layout for that reason. I do wish I were. Oh, please go ahead.
Yeah, layouts, you can look at the big picture, the whole page, and you can look how each paragraph is organized between one another. There is a lot of, it's kind of playful too. You play with the elements in the page. It can be very, very, very fun to play with. Hello, wonderful weirdos. This is Diogo Nogueira again, and today I'd like to talk to you about one of my favorite games, a game that I created, and if you listen to the podcast, I love dinosaurs, and it's called Primal Quest. It is a weird stone and sorcery adventure game. It's a NSR game, which is this game that caters to the old school style of play, but has more modern and more cinematic gameplay adapted to our modern sensibilities. It has adventure with dinosaurs, ancient civilizations, spirity, sorcery, aliens, elder gods, and much, much more. It's very pulpy. It has, a complete rule set, a mini hex scroll, an adventure introductory adventure. You can find it at Exalted Funeral, itch.io, Drive-Thru RPG, and your best local game store. And we're releasing more and more stuff for it, so stay tuned and play Primal Quest. So let's get back to the weird with our chat. I was going to ask you about maybe inspirations from where you learn game design and design and layout stuff. Could you maybe point anywhere or any artists that you were inspirational to you or formative to how you do your work?
Gosh, I mean,
and it could be not necessarily from RPG. It can be from other type of artists.
So I think no, boy. Okay, I'm gonna mention two things off the top of my head that I feel like I'm just obsessed with. First is there's a writer named Walter Moyers, Moers. You will have the hardest time finding him online because he has almost no presence. He doesn't advertise any of his stuff, and his books are brilliant. If I had to choose my favorite City of Dreaming books, if I had to choose the one that I would give to anyone off the street because it's the best read, Rumo, Rumo. He writes, I've heard him described as he's like a combination of Douglas Adams, so all the sarcasm and humor from the science fiction, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe. Douglas Adams meets Tolkien meets Shel Silverstein. He draws his own line work art for his books. And what I love about him is he is utterly playful. And he's playful in a way that invites you to feel playful. His stories, I often think they're like those nesting dolls. Every time you think you're reading one story, there will be another story inside of it. So he'll be talking about we've got to find this particular character, because they're doing blah, blah, blah. But they have the comet wine, which that's another story, how they made the comet wine. You see, when the comet passes over the grape fields, it creates this particular vintage. And the last time the comet passed, a horrible thing was done to everyone on that plantation. And here's the story of how the last bottle of comet wine, anyway, and it just keeps going like that. Every story has more stories inside. And then he'll loop back and later on in the story, bring up some story you thought he discarded, 3 chapters ago, because obviously that was just a throwaway. And when it comes up again, you're like, oh, that's genius. But anyway, he's lovely. Rumo is the story of, it's a swashbuckling story of heroism, but utterly weird and strange, and involves going into a perverse underworld where I can't even do it justice. I'd have to think about it. There are these creatures that are monstrously huge and have giant distended tubes that come from their stomach to envelop you and suck you up and then digest you. Anyway, there's City of Dreaming books involves an author who he ends up in Bookholm, which is the ultimate source of all published materials, which is built over these catacombs, which have ever more strange books, including mythical ones like animatomes and toxitomes that will poison you with a touch. And there's this entire cult of figures called book hunters who are vicious and brutal and go down to the depths to uncover the most precious of the 100 books on the golden list so that they can make their mark on the world. Anyway, it's wonderfully creative, wonderfully fabulous, and it doesn't forget to not take itself seriously. And that's what I love about his work. So there's one. And then I guess art-wise...
And how
please.
How the work of Walter Moyes influenced your work? What did you think you learned from it, and or maybe you try to instill in the stuff that you do?
It's interesting because I tend to think of my inspirations as being kin. And maybe that's arrogant of me. I don't know. I see them as anybody who writes or creates in a way that feels familiar or exciting to me. I don't think I consciously think I want this to look like X or I want this to feel like Y. I
No,
think
it's
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 much
more like
more that
a thing.
no, please go
Maybe a
ahead.
quality, or maybe the way he approaches his work, or maybe the way he expresses his authenticity, maybe inspired you to try something, not necessarily copying him, but the spirit of the way he embraces something,
Boy. I mean, I
or
think
no.
I love the playfulness and I love that in all the artists and writers who I'm passionate about. But I will say this, I think all artists, all creatives, we're like a compost heap, you know?
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of absorption. I'm a manic reader. And I am passionate about storylines. I watch an unbelievable amount of shows and I love a ton of shows. I can talk about some that I feel are really inspiring. But I feel like, you stick it all in your grist, right? You grind it all up and it kind of festers in you. And then when you get an idea, it's all those things, right? They're all coming through.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I was gonna say, so here's some shows, and some of these nobody watches. Um, Hilda, everybody knows about Hilda on Netflix. If you don't, you should. 12 Forever. Oh my gosh, that show is so good. Oh, that one's like a low key slow burn brilliant. You don't realize how brilliant it is until it gets there. Infinity
What is
Train.
that? What
Oh my
is
gosh.
12 Forever?
I have to tell you all of these. If you ask me about one, I'm going to tell you about all of them. 12 Forever 12 Forever. If
choose
if
choose
you
three. Choose three, like three to get
Oh
more
man, do I
into
have to?
detail. I mean, Hilda, I think it's at
Shira
least
and the
for me, I
Princess.
know what it is.
Yeah,
So
okay.
it's
Shira and the
Shira
Princesses
is
of Power.
great. Yeah, it's
Okay, you
that's
great. Okay,
great.
you love it.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah,
Okay, and you of course know Steven Universe and love it.
yeah. But I don't know it deeply. I know
Oh, you gotta watch
superficially.
the whole
Yeah,
thing. It's so good.
I'm
Um,
watching Adventure Time, like
Heck
finishing
yeah.
Adventure
Oh,
Time.
you
It's
can't
great.
lose. Yeah.
And
There,
Over
there's
the
another.
Garden Wall, which is
Yes.
fantastic too.
Well,
Yeah.
both of those are great examples of like shows that manage to balance being brilliantly creative and artistically on the edge, but also just enjoying the play of creating in this very genuine way. Those shows are wonderfully playful. And I love Adventure Time in particular for being able to keep that sense of childhood mashups. Like in creating all these characters for Infinibrix, here's Cyber Chefarai. Is he cybernetic? Yes. Is he a chef? Yes. Is he a samurai? Yes. Yes to all these things. He's all these things.
Yes.
Adventure Time is a great example of adults who understand, who remember how to be freely creative in the way that only a certain age group of kids do without effort. It takes effort as an adult to keep that level
Oh
of
yeah.
savage, fierce,
Playfulness. Yeah.
unrestrained creativity where there's no shame. So actually, you know what? There's an open door to 12 Forever. That's what 12 Forever does so brilliantly. So 12 Forever is a retelling of Peter Pan if you wanted the shortest possible answer, but it's not that at all. It's about a young girl. She's 11 at the beginning of the series. She's struggling with identity, self, puberty, all the awkwardness of being 11. She turns 12 very early in the series, finding friends, figuring out who she wants to be. She has this thing she made in art class that looks like a key. And when she uses it, she goes to a world that is entirely of her imagination. And there she has superpowers and is able to do anything. And all the creatures there are wild and bizarre and strange and sometimes upsetting. And what happens is she ends up meeting some kids who end up being able to go there too. And the question becomes like, what does it mean to have that shared fantasy world? Can you share your fantasy world? Like, how do you trust other people with this kind of wild vulnerability? And also,
Yeah.
can you grow up and still keep this part of you? does keeping this part of you stop you from growing up? How do you negotiate that as you grow? There's some very interesting, there's one particular episode that I think is really powerful where she meets this character who's a little suspicious, and they eventually figure out that this is a kid who never went back. They seem like a denizen of this world, like a fully weird, strange character who isn't from their world. And they've kind of forgotten their humanity, and they're not really a person anymore. But they have some lingering scraps of that prior person. So it's a very interesting exploration of what all those things mean. How do you balance
Sounds
weirdness
great.
and wildness and identity and creativity with all the demands of the outside world, right?
Yeah, it's metaphor for growing up, right? Like
Oh yeah, but it manages to do
abandon this.
so many interesting weird things with that. You know, they don't. I love a good allegory, but boy, clumsy allegory is no fun. You know, if your
Yeah,
message
no.
is really easy and accessible, I'm always like, oh come
No,
on.
it's there's
And
a
this
lot of
is
detail there, like
yeah,
getting there and there being 12 forever, and if you're growing up, can you fit through the door and get inside there?
right,
You know, there's a
exactly.
lot of details that you can explore that and that fit. And if you stay there a lot, will be able to grow as you're supposed to grow
Or are
outside
you going to
or
change into
not.
something weird and yeah, like are you going to
Yeah.
lose something if you stay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking it's in the
No.
writing, it's in the how they do it that makes this show
Yeah.
so genius. I think it's really brilliantly written and thoughtfully written and understands childhood in a way that a lot of shows don't. I feel like kids get written like sarcastic, sassy little adults a lot, and I really don't like that because honestly, adults are a lot more boring than kids. Kids are way more interesting, and I think this one really gets a lot of the elements of being a kid. If you don't know Infinity Train, by the way, you have to go watch that. Like
Infinity
obsessively
Train.
what? Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, you don't. Okay, can I give you the hook, the pitch for this? Because this show is
Mm-hmm.
unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Um, this girl's parents are divorced. She is planning to go to this coding camp for games over the summer, and her dad can't come to pick her up to take her there, and her mom can't leave to take her there, so she's getting her whole summer ruined by this. Angry, she leaves. She stomps over to the train tracks, determined to get there somehow, and a train shows up, and the door opens, and she gets on. It is not a train to anywhere in this world. It is the Infinity Train. Every car is a different world. And in order to get from train car to train car, you have to figure out what's happening. There's always some secret or weirdness that you have to get to the next car. You have a number on your hand. It's a glowing number.
Mm.
And the number goes up sometimes and it goes down sometimes. And as the series progresses, you realize that what's happening is the more you run away from your problems or indulge in your problems, the higher the number gets. When your number gets to 0, you get off the train. And each season does a different character, and they sort of knit them together brilliantly. And there's the last season they have a character who shows up who's wearing a hood, and at one point they take the hood off and their entire body is covered by their number. Their skin is just glowing and alight with numbers. It's a really thoughtful exploration of kind of how you grow emotionally and deal with things or don't, and what that does to you.
Yeah.
And it's really sci-fi. It's got some horror elements in it. Like if you try to get off the train, there are some things that chase you that are pretty terrifying. I would wake up in the middle of the night thinking about them. But I was able to watch the whole series with my son, and he loved it. So highly recommend. Very deeply
Yeah.
thoughtful, really great story.
I'll look for it for sure.
Yeah. I think it's on Netflix now. No, maybe not. This is one of those ones that was on Hulu, and then they got bought out by a
I
kind of
think here in
right-wing
Brazil
person.
is on Prime, on
Oh,
Amazon Prime. I
but you have
think
to buy
here,
it.
yeah.
You have to buy it. That's the thing about it. You have to buy it. It's not free on Prime.
Oh yeah.
And
Here
that's a
it's not.
problem
So,
from
yeah.
so
I think it's not
Hulu
even available on Prime here.
so here's the problem.
Yeah.
it used to be available, and Hulu was bought out by a conservative CEO, and he removed LGBTQIA plus content. Anything that was supportive of identity and values got removed. And 12 and Infinity Train was one of the victims of that purge. It was
It might
genius.
be on Max or not.
I
don't
can
know.
check.
Yeah,
Let
it's
me,
Warner Brothers and stuff.
yeah, I'm gonna check because
Yeah.
it's so good,
I'll
so
look
good.
for it. Yeah.
Anyway, I find all of those really passionately exciting because I mean, I'll be honest, I have about 20 different settings with fully illustrated decks, all the rules included for my classes. And all of them have their own Pinterest board so kids can look and find graphics that inspire them. And then if they vote on settings and they get into a conflict, they'll do mashups or create their own world. And
Yeah.
consuming massive amounts of really good stories is really crucial to my
Yeah.
compost. Like I
Yeah.
need fuel because I'm gonna guide their stories and I have to come up with, twists and
Yeah.
surprises that'll help them re-engage. And yeah, I find it so important to
Yeah, it's
really
what comes
invest
in
in
is what
story.
comes out, right?
Yeah,
Like if you
exactly.
yeah. If you have to
Absolutely.
surround yourself by good stuff to be able to do good stuff. And that's go for what we do here as game designers and in
Heck yeah.
company as people and everything, you know. And Michael, I would like to know, we are an hour and a half deep in
Oh,
here, and I'd
sorry.
like to
Yeah.
ask you. No, that's great. I'd like to more about a little bit more personal question about weird experiences you might have
Please.
had. We always ask here about religion or maybe spirituality or maybe philosophy. If you have anything like this in your life and how that affects you in your daily
Mm.
life or in your work and the people around you. Do you Are you a religious person? Do you have any kind of spirituality, or even you stood any kind of philosophy that helps you deal with the difficult moments of life?
Wow. I'm going to have to think about this for a second. My first answer is going to be I was raised by an evolutionary biologist. So, my understanding of how things worked and why people did the things they did was very much shaped by an understanding of, most of our behaviors are ones that evolved over thousands of years and were really, really effective at helping us survive and reproduce in our original environments. And then we reshaped our original environments into this world, and we still have the same evolved behaviors. And as a result, we're horribly mismatched with our environment now.
Yeah,
I always say frogs on Mars. We evolved to be in swamps, and now we're on Mars. We're just not evolved to deal with being this densely populated, living at this scale, living in the way that we live. We've created
24/7
entirely,
news.
yeah, created an entirely novel artificial environment to which we're horribly ill adapted. So I think a lot of our problems just really stem from that. We kept behaving the way that worked about 1,000 years ago. Right up until about 1,000 years ago, the same behaviors pretty much worked, um, and now they don't. And they're continuing to become less and less well adapted to the world we live in, the world that we've created for ourselves. So
Hmm.
I guess that is probably my basic understanding of why people do the
Yeah.
things they do. In terms of
And how do you
spirit,
deal? How do you deal with that? How do you deal with this inadequacies? Because that happens with us too.
mm,
Like we feel these problems, we feel the anxiety, we feel uh, we get angry, we get frustrated, we get I don't know. How do
I,
you do with your
isolated,
problems
all
with
the
that?
different
Yeah.
ways in which we've created these bizarre, you used to live the entirety of your life within a community of under 200 people for 99% of human history. And now you're likely to live around a whole bunch of people who are complete strangers and
Yeah.
don't you don't know them at
You
all.
don't. Yeah.
It's terrifying. From a very basic evolutionary perspective. How do I deal with it? That's interesting. I guess I create my own networks and my own kin. I mean, this is found family, right? This is why we all feel it to be such a
Yeah.
compelling concept. You can still create community in wherever you are in the world. And that's the thing that I think you have to be willing to invest in. It's a little bit like, it's weird. We talk about working out, everybody's like, "Oh yeah, I got to keep in shape. I got to be healthy." We know we got to move our bodies. But people don't always know how to invest in community. Like that's a thing you need to do. If it takes effort, good. Spend
Yeah.
some. Get out there. Build some community. It doesn't have to be, not every person has to be a person that you love, but they have to be someone who you understand and they understand you, and you have a way to help each other out, and you are gentle with each other because you are part of a community together. So I think that's huge, and I think that's one thing that compels me to teach. I feel very fortunate to be able to be in community with students, and after teaching for 2 decades, I have so many students who they're now grown, and I get to know them as full grown people, and they're amazing. And I feel so lucky that they're in my
Yeah.
life, and they're entirely in my life because they feel connected to me, and we are connected to one another by that community that we formed in the classroom. So I feel very fortunate in that. If you want the weird stuff, I have this
No, I
belief.
mean,
I got a
asking about
weirdness.
the. Okay, go ahead.
Oh
Yeah.
no, you go ahead if you want. I was gonna go into something that I think
Yeah.
might be fun, but
The,
go
the,
ahead.
the question would be, how did you learn the importance of community and having this health uh, relationship with people, and having this support was important for being healthy, for mental health, and for dealing with the difficult moments in life? Did you learn that from your parents? Have you always had a community around you,
No,
or?
no, no. I think I learned by negative example. I love my mom to death, and she's a lovely human being. She is, in many ways, someone who has created a lot of community around herself. She's a professor. She's retired now. Um, you know, mentored a lot of grad students, but was almost entirely only connected to her students, and they move away. And so when she retired, she sort of doesn't have a lot of other people. And when I was growing up, it was just me and her. We were very much our own community, and we didn't have that many other people. The people who were around were colleagues or students who came to the house because there was some sort of event. So I think as I grew, this is still, it's an ongoing process. I'm still finding community and looking for community. I think that's key. um it's really key in
But
talking with kids, is
yeah,
talking about
when
the
did you
fact that, listen,
realize
nobody's
the?
done. Nobody's
Yeah.
done. We're all still
Oh
doing the
yeah.
thing.
Oh
There's
yeah.
no finish line in life until you're dead. If you're still breathing, you're still hustling on a bunch of
Oh yeah.
things that you haven't figured out yet. So, to the extent that I've figured anything out, I'm still figuring it out. But I think that's
Yeah.
probably where I got the urge to connect from, is I wanted that sense of community and didn't know how to make it happen for myself except through my weird passions. So, that's one of the reasons
Yeah.
teaching worked for me, is I teach things I'm passionate about and can get excited about and can convey that excitement. Um, and I also like get excited by the kids' passions, and they can, I can learn from those and be like, oh my gosh, yeah, no, you're right. This is amazing. I'm super into this now. Yeah, let's do this. So yeah, I think weirdness was sort of my open door to starting to create and foster and maintain community. Yeah.
Yeah. And have you ever felt the when did you felt the need for the community, or have you ever do you feel comfortable being alone, and do you enjoy alone time too, or how it is? Like, for example, my wife hates doing stuff alone, you know but I do kind of enjoy it, like going for a walk alone, or going to the
Yeah.
movies
Yeah,
alone,
yeah,
or
yeah. I'm more of an extrovert than my wife. My partner is very much I think I joke that both of us are sort of extroverted introverts. We both have very vast internal worlds, but we're really excited when we find the right people to share them with.
yeah.
But yeah, I think so. It's interesting. I think I am happy. I think I love classroom community is so huge to me, and I really enjoy teaching and also, learning. I think a lot of like large social gatherings, I'm not a fan. I'm a small group person. If I don't have a particular purpose, I'm the kind of person who like, I'll host a dinner party before I go to one, because I'd much rather
Yeah.
have the business of having to cook and figure out how it's all going to work. Like, give me a job, and I feel like I'm purposeful and I know what to do. But if you
Yeah.
just tell
To
me like,
keep
yeah,
your
you just show up, hang out, I'm like, I don't know what that means. Like,
yeah.
and I think that's one of the
It's
reasons I
to
loved.
lose. Yeah.
Right. And that's one of the reasons I loved games, right? Because games, they gave you, and this is important for folks who are ND, but I think all of us, it
Yeah.
helps you. A great game, like a great class, it gives you a sense of, here's our collective mission and here's some stuff we can do to get to know each other and to connect with one another, and here are all the
Yeah.
activities that will allow us agency and direction in finding these things. I wish I were smooth enough and relaxed enough that I could just be like, yeah, just show up, talk to anybody about anything.
Mhm.
I don't really
Yeah.
care.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not that guy. I'm not that guy.
Yeah. Me
So
neither. And that's very
right.
true. I think games can be a great tool for people to experience this social interaction in a more structured way that's more playful
Yeah,
and yeah.
100%.
I I think that helped me a lot now I'm realizing all the stuff.
Yeah, well,
Michael,
oh, sorry,
yeah.
go ahead. I was still thinking about that question
Oh
about
yeah, the weird
spirituality.
stuff. Yeah.
If you're interested,
Yeah, of course.
I have a weird theory about. This is my personal take, being raised by an evolutionary biologist.
Yeah.
I feel like part of why we have I feel like part of spirituality, and this is only part. I'm not. I don't want to invalidate anyone's beliefs or system of thought, but it's about control. So if I'm a hunter gatherer and I go out to hunt buffalo and there are no buffalo and I have no idea why, it's not like there's been a drought. It's not like there's something predictable that happened. It's just they're just nowhere to be found. I and my people may die, and I'm going to immediately feel like, what the heck do I do? How do I get control of this? Where do I find the buffalo? Now, if somebody in my tribe can tell me, hey, listen, uh, Boss Buffalo is pissed at you. You did something wrong. You gotta do something to make it right. So here's this ritual that you can perform. Hold on, my dog is making
Mhm.
noise. She just woke up and decided she wanted to go out right in the middle of me talking. Hang on. So if somebody can tell me this, they can say, listen, this is the thing you can do to get control back of this thing that is utterly outside of your control. Now, will it necessarily give me the control I'm looking for? No. But will it assuage my anxiety to feel like at least I'm taking action in the face of an uncontrollable thing that may destroy my world? Yes. So I like
Yeah.
to joke that I call it logical animism. I'm a logical animist. I'll talk to my computer when it's malfunctioning. Do I really believe it has a personality? Do I really believe I can
No,
convince
yeah.
it? That's not really the issue. I'm not really dealing with whether that's real or wrong. It gives me a sense of agency to talk to the computer because I don't
Yeah.
understand how it actually operates. So I'm going to talk with it. And I have a lot of weird little things like, I'm not going to step on cracks. If I see a penny, I'm going to pick it up. Um, I have a lot of different weird little, and I'm very conscious of, I try to pick weird little habits and weird little traditions that don't cost me much and are easy to control, but give me a sense of
I'm doing
forestalling a lack
something,
of,
yeah.
I'm doing something to create good fortune in my life. I'm doing the things that allow me
Yeah.
control over the things I actually have no control over. But
Yeah.
I
You're
try to be
doing your
conscious.
part, right?
I'm trying to
I'm
be
doing my part. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm trying to be conscious of the fact that I'm not really expecting that these things are going to change or shape the universe,
Mhm.
but I am doing small things that assuage my own anxiety about my lack of control, which I think is a
Yeah.
very, sensible, well evolved thing to do to manage your
Yeah.
anxiety. Because the
It's
truth
a
is,
very human thing to do. Like we
right,
do that
none of
a
us control
lot.
this stuff. None of
Yeah.
us do. Like, you know what? Bad things happen. And sometimes they happen for no good reason. In fact, quite often they do. So
Yeah.
the world is not a predictable place. If things are working out for you, the truth is you're just lucky, which is terrifying
Yeah.
to some people. People get real upset when you say that. Like with my students, they'd all be like, "So how did you get where you are today, Mr. Lone?" I'm like, "I'm lucky." And they would all just look horrified, like, and I'm like, "Listen, guys, I could sit here and tell you that I chose this and I made this happen for myself and I controlled my destiny. But if I told you that, I'd be lying. The truth is,
Yeah.
anyone who has anything had a combination of lucky breaks and taking advantage of lucky breaks. So the only
Yeah.
thing you can do to really
You have to
help
be
yourself,
ready for the lucky breaks, but it is
yes. And I
about the
often say
lucky
that
breaks. Yeah.
the thing I would end up telling kids is I say, put yourself in the path of luck. Go
Yeah.
places and do things where lucky breaks are possible. The kind of
Yeah.
lucky breaks you want. Now, don't think that that means you're going to get them, and don't be resentful
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
don't. You can't think that, well, I did the things and
And
give me
and
the thing that I.
sometimes
It's not how it
you
is.
get you get not what you want,
Yes.
but it will be better in the end for some reason. You learned something,
As
and
long as you're trying and you're putting yourself in the path of
yeah,
luck, there's a chance for good
and
things
you're
to
open
happen.
for it, and you're
Yeah.
open for different things, and
Yeah.
not being that's the only thing I want is this, and if
Yeah.
it's not this, it doesn't, you
So
know.
many kids get trapped by that because I do think, especially now, one of the hardest things, imagine growing up only 300 years ago. Chances are your parent was doing a job and you were learning that job from the time you were little. And it was expected that
Yeah.
you would do that job when they weren't doing that job, and you'd take it over at some point because you knew how to do it. And so things were already kind of set. And you had that security of, well, I do this job that is meaningful in our community because somebody's got to do this job all the time. Now, literally, take a deep breath, blink, and the entire landscape of work will change. So when kids look at me and they're like, well, why should I learn to do this? How's this going to help me in life? I'm like, listen, I can't tell you. And they go, what? And I'm like, I can't tell you for certain how the skills I'm going to teach you are going to directly lead to your occupational
Yeah.
success. I can tell you that I can teach you to be analytical. I can give you communication skills and analytical skills that allow you to think, come up with creative solutions, and I'm also teach you how to research so you can find things out for yourself about what's true.
You're learning how to learn. Yeah.
And that's the only thing that I can give you that is a guarantee, because literally 50%, currently the estimate is 50% of the jobs that will be available within 10 years are going to be entirely new jobs that didn't exist
Yeah.
now. So, I mean, this is horribly scary for a lot of students. They're like, well, I can
Yeah.
see that the world is constantly changing. And unlike, kids 300, 400,000 years ago, they don't have that sense of, here are the jobs. Look, there's jobs. There's a guy who
Yeah.
bakes. There's that lady who does she brings in fish. And there's that one guy who takes care of all the livestock. And there's a herder over here who raises animals to eat and also for milk. And these are my options, right? Now
Yeah.
it's like, I don't even know what's possible. I don't even know what I'll be paid for. Entire industries are being disrupted right now. Gosh, I mean, so many things are being disrupted, but one of the big ones is a whole bunch of folks working in design have been being fired.
Yeah.
Sort of mass layoffs in something that is a highly educated, white collar, I did all this work, look at me, I have a degree kind of
Art,
field, right?
writing,
Oh gosh.
creativity, it's being uh under attack kind of way. Like AI, it's
Actually,
being
I have a
causing.
theory about that. I have a theory about where the AI thing is going to push us. I think you're going to make a lot of money off of AI. Let me explain what I mean. You make brilliantly hand-drawn, beautiful illustrations, very unique, very creative, very weird, very wonderful. I think handmade things and things that are clearly made by people are going to become of greater and greater value as the kind of
Yeah,
incredibly
but they
plastic.
also will make it more inaccessible, right? Because it will be a luxury item kind of way.
Actually, I think it might go the opposite way. I think it might be that it becomes like anything, like example, fashion, right? Right now, kids are actively looking for vintage wear and learning how to mend and create their own clothes. And they're doing it precisely because that's the one thing that nobody has. So, can anyone do
Yeah.
this? Can anyone learn to sew and mend? Sure. But it's time and it's effort, but it's a creative agency that allows you to develop these skills that nobody else has and create beautiful garments that, first off, aren't using massive amounts of resources and aren't horrible for the
Mm-hmm.
environment. And second off, are these beautiful one-off art pieces where you know that if you buy a jacket from this person, no one else has that jacket. Not a single other person. So no one can look like you. Same thing's true, I think, for other arts. At least this is my optimism speaking. Don't ask me
Yeah.
for my
I,
pessimistic take because I have one of those too. I just try to,
yeah.
I don't try to indulge it.
Yeah. Do you see yourself more of a positive person than a pessimist? For a long while, I had
Mm.
this saying that I preferred being a pessimistic because if things go wrong, like yeah, I already knew it was going to go wrong, so there's nothing new. But if things go right, and like you are actually surprised and you're more able to enjoy when the things
You
go
know,
right.
I
But now I'm changing a little bit. I see a lot
right?
of this people say the universe conspires, but it's more about what you're being aligned to. Like if you're paying attention
Mm.
to good stuff,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not necessarily that the good stuff will happen more often, but you're more perceptive of it. You're more appreciative. I don't know.
Yeah.
You
No.
can appreciate it more. And but
Yes.
if you're all tuned into the bad stuff all the time, that's what we will see all the time, right?
Well, and I think there's a key element there, right? The more energy you spend on being negative, the more likely it is that you will stop yourself before you try something. When students come to me and they're feeling very, feeling despair, because a lot of kids feel despair. They look at the world that
Mm-hmm.
that we've given them, right? And
Yeah.
there's a part of this, and I'll be real about this. There's a part of this that is perception. We only
Yeah.
promote negative news. If you look at the percentages worldwide, even with the horrific conflicts, really horrific murder going on large scale worldwide, our percentage of violent deaths and our percentage, our average lifespan. So deaths are down, average lifespan is up, education is up, rates of abuse are down. When you compare it to percentage wise, what we were looking at, hundreds of years ago. So, has there
Yeah.
been aggregate progress? Yeah, there has. But,
Mm.
as a kid growing up today, you're like, dude, planet's on fire and you guys lit it. What the heck? Like, how am I even supposed to get excited about stuff when I'm worried about, like,
Yeah.
what am I going to do? And we, in my high school classrooms, a large part of what I taught was nonfiction research. And I would let the kids pick their own research topics and we would get deep into really serious questions. So, stuff like I used to have a unit called Should I Go to College or Deal Drugs? And literally, we looked at both the economics and the risks of college and drug dealing as professions, right? As economic choices. And, the answer is there's a reason that dealing drugs is not a good choice. And the answer is it's incredibly risky, really high rates of injury and death. And also it pays like working at McDonald's. In fact, it pays about half of what working at McDonald's pays because there's a similar massive corporate structure where profits get funneled up to the top and the people on the bottom are
Yeah.
treated as disposable and you don't even get health care. So it's like, well, listen, if you really are considering dealing drugs as a profession, you're honestly economically better off working at McDonald's. Now, it's
Wow.
got better
Yeah.
media. It's got better media surrounding it, so it looks cooler. But the truth is, it's
Yeah.
actually a worse job than flipping burgers. So you'd be much better off doing anything else. Certainly going to college. But anyway, um, we do these sorts of real world research projects, and they'd find out, sometimes very surprising things. And at some point in the class, inevitably, some kid would ask me, like, Mr. Lowe, like, do you have any hope for the future? Because like you're letting us learn the realities that we're going to deal with. And my answer would always be, well, look at how I'm raising my son. They would look at me kind of funny, and I said, well, listen, if I were to raise him for a yes, hello. Do you hear that? Is he
Yeah,
loud
it's the
enough?
cat.
Okay. Yeah, here. I think he's hungry, but I'll let him be on
Yeah.
my shoulder for a second because he likes that. But
Yeah.
but I said, if I really believed in a disastrous future, I would be get cat butt. There you go.
Yeah.
I would be buying, land near a freshwater body of water on the top of a mountain somewhere, and teaching my son to throw knives and use a Geiger counter and skin animals and lay traps
Yeah.
and and I'm like, instead, I'm living in a major metropolitan area. I'm teaching him to be kind and empathetic and creative, and I'm teaching him to connect with people. So if you want to know whether I'm optimistic, look at how I'm raising my son. Having a kid
Yeah.
is an act of hope, and just to start with,
It
raising a kid to
is.
be trying to raise a kid, genuinely trying to raise a kid to be a lovely person is a massive gesture of hope. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I'm a hopeful guy. And I am an optimistic guy. And I think honestly, when you are positive in your outlook, your chances of being able to take that opportunity when it happens, right? If you're in the path of luck, your chances to be able to open that door and step through, and even being willing to open that door and step through, are much greater.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Michael, we
Yeah.
are almost at 2 hours, so I'm gonna make the last three questions. They're more whimsical, so because
Please.
I gotta get my kid on school too. We
No,
have some
I'm
cat.
amazed. I'm amazed we went
Yeah,
this long. I really
yeah.
appreciate you being this like, thank
Oh, I
you for
love
giving
it.
me
I
this much
love
time.
it.
I was really having
Yeah,
fun, and like, I
yeah.
appreciate it. Thank you.
I love it. But for me, it has to be at least an hour and a half, and if I can, I shoot for more. It's just that today I have the thing in the school, so yeah. Uh,
Life. It happens.
yeah. Michael, if you could have any superpower, what superpower would you have, and what would be the first thing you would do with it?
Okay. I actually used to do this as a thought experiment with all of my students. And so there's the right. So my favorite, it actually comes from a Walter Moyer's book. I would love to have the ability to, just by hanging out with students, help activate all their personal talents and gifts and inspiration. I would love that ability. Um, I would love that. That would just
Yeah,
be delightful. So just by hanging out, by talking to them, I could inspire and get people being creative and help
yeah,
them
like a
become
super
their best
teacher.
selves.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, just I would love to do that for everyone. Like, wouldn't
yeah,
the world be a wonderful place if everybody just could
yeah. If
be their
everybody
best
could,
self?
could found their passion and their
Yeah. So I
what they're
my thought
here
about,
for, kind of in a way.
yeah,
Right.
well, what they want, to be the
Yeah,
person they would like to be, a person that
yeah.
they enjoy living. We all want to enjoy living in our own
Meaningful.
skin.
Right? Yeah,
Yeah, and it's hard to learn how to do that often. So if
yeah,
I could make that easier for kids, because I always think kids, it's easy to know that kids deserve it. I think
yeah,
all human beings deserve it. And I think everyone ultimately,
yeah,
if we all just had the right help in being the person we want to be, there we wouldn't have so many awful things
yeah.
happening. Um,
For
but
sure.
yeah, so that would be my favorite superpower. Although
Yeah,
it's a little bit niche. It's my
it's a
fave.
great one. Yeah. And if you could choose anything from fiction, whether from books or from
Mm.
games, from
Mm.
movies, and made that thing real in our world, what
Oh
would you
gosh.
choose, and why? And it
You made
can
it sound like
be
these
a
were easy
location.
questions. These are not easy questions. That's too big. Oh my gosh. Ah,
And it can be a location, a faction, a power, an entity.
I hear you.
Yeah,
He's like
yeah, I
looking at me
think he
like,
has an
you
opinion.
clearly
Yeah.
don't hear me because you are not feeding me right now. We'll feed you in a minute. Um, that's almost too much. Like, I want to do something playful and not thoughtful, just because if I try to get thoughtful with it, I will get trapped in the what ifs and the well thens and the
Yeah.
yeah. gosh. One thing from fiction.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to be self-referential here, but like my favorite world that I've made is Luna Uni, and it's a utopian future. And
that's
one of the
great,
reasons
yeah.
it's a utopia is all the core worlds have figured out that all life is descended from a now vanished people known only as the progenitors. And so all life is now considered sacred, and everyone has a deep cultural value in maintaining sustainability and allowing all life to flourish. And they all treat each other with, kindness and empathy and all the things
Yeah.
you would like people to treat each other with. Yeah. So I guess I want a cultural concept of like of true respect for
Understanding and respect for one another.
respect for
Yeah.
life. Yeah. And genuine commitment to loving each other, right? Loving each other and loving life and being,
Yeah.
I guess I'm being extra hopeful. And then, if
I
I were
was
just going to
talking
say,
to yeah.
yeah, go ahead,
I was
please.
talking to my kids today about this, and we're talking about possibility of aliens, and I
Yeah,
said
yeah.
that there's a lot of people that believe that if there are aliens, maybe they're not coming here because they see that clearly
Look at that
we don't have
backwater.
our
Yeah.
shit together. Like we're killing each other over stupid
Dude,
things all the
they
time.
have
So
prisons. They
yeah,
have
yeah,
prisons. I don't need to know anything else about those people. I don't want to meet
yeah,
them. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. That's yeah. My thought is always, gosh, I hope we figure it out. I want to have faith.
yeah,
But yeah,
yeah. And finally, the last question is: Do you remember the last time you felt really happy and grateful for being here and being alive? And if you do, when was that? And what were you doing?
well, right now, I'm having a lot of time. I feel that way a lot,
Oh,
honestly. Like I don't know if that's a weird answer. I feel very grateful. I feel like
do
I'm
you
a
have
very
a practice of gratitude? Do you take a time every day to
gosh,
remember,
I wish I were that
a small
structured.
thing?
Well, okay, let's hope that nobody from my son's school listens to your podcast. None of the teachers or academic. So yesterday, my partner's out of town. She's on business, and he came late Sunday. Sunday they came home late because he's in this program to go to Costa Rica, which is super exciting. And they have to go to these meetings, and the meetings are in San Francisco, so they had to take a plane flight to go to this meeting, and they were delayed, and they spent all this time in the airport. He came home, he was just exhausted, and my partner was leaving in the morning, Monday morning, at like 5:30 a.m. and was like, we
Wow.
should really let him sleep in. And I was like, yeah, don't worry, I got this, just go, let me figure out what to do. So in the morning, I have class at 9 a.m. and he woke up and was just exhausted at like, 8:30, which is already late to class, right? And I was like, okay. I was like, listen, man, I can take you in a rush right now. I can take you after my class at 11:30, or we can just call this day off. And he took the day off with me, and we sat in bed and we watched the Adventures of Dragon Quest. And we binge watched anime and cuddled and laughed our butts off and made up stuff. And I mean, what more do you want out of life, right?
Yeah.
So I felt very
Yeah.
grateful. I think every time I get to hang out with my kid, with my partner, the fact that I get to have a home that I get to invest in putzing about and modifying and making furniture, and I don't know. There's just so many things in my life that feel like such a blessing. I'm able to eat every day, you know, and I feel like it's
Yeah.
not very hard to remember to be grateful because I'm
Oh, it
I'm
is hard.
very lucky,
It
very
is
lucky.
hard. Yeah.
I know,
If
well, but
you,
it's weird.
yeah,
It's weird to think that it's hard because it's like you look around and you're like, do I have my health?
yeah,
Am I eating
yeah,
regularly? Already I'm beating out a huge percentage of the world, you know?
yeah. But how many people actually stop to think about this every day? Because we are all, as you said, we are as
Negative
a
bias.
you learn. Yeah, we're always
Yeah.
thinking we have to find the bad
Yeah.
thing, because that's how we survive. Like we have to
Right,
pay
exactly. You have to,
attention.
if you don't
So
pay attention to the saber-toothed tiger, it's going to eat you.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
that's
So
how it goes. Yeah.
the better it got, the better situation got, the silliest things puts us off, right?
Yeah. The most trivial. Well, and that's the thing. This is the trick. Ready? I'm gonna go back to it. Frogs on Mars, right? We're adapted to be terrified. Watch your six, man. Something's gonna eat you. It's like, guess what? Nobody's gonna eat you.
Yeah.
You're fine.
And now it's like, I think someone is talking about me on the internet.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I like just disconnect yourself, man. It's not real. Like, stop jumping at shadows. You're good. You know, if your primal ancestors could see the way you live now, their minds would be blown. Like, just blown. You mean you never have to worry about food? Like legit, you never have to worry about food? You don't have to like move camp? You stay in the same place all year, even when it's cold? You know, mind-boggling. Just mind-boggling. So yeah, I don't know. I guess I try to stay inside of my joy. I focus on the stuff I love as much as I can. And yeah, you can't give too much bandwidth to your fears. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways to practice that. I don't know. I go to therapy, you know, like I try to do the grown-up stuff. I try to work out and keep my body healthy. I try to create things I love and get excited about the things I love. Talk to people who inspire me. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here.
Totally my pleasure. Literally, it's an honor. I love your work. And I'm super excited to meet you. So thank you.
And Michael, do you have any last message for the wonderful weirdos out there that might be listening to us?
Reach out, say hi. I don't know. That's not a message, but boy, let's all be in community. Like, talk to me.
Where they can reach you,
So I'm on Discord. I'm Michael at luckoflegends.com. And that's actually my email too. If you want to email me, go ahead. Michael at luckoflegends.com. I'm Luck of Legends on Threads. I think I'm at Luck Legends on Twitter. I'm Luck of Legends on Instagram, which I only marginally post on. Same thing on Facebook. But yeah, I feel like Discord is the place I've found the easiest to keep chatting with folks. Now that I'm a little less on Twitter because I just can't with the guy who runs
Twitter is gone, and we live in a post-apocalypse world that was formerly known as Twitter.
I feel like there's probably a fun online Twitter game we could create around that principle. It's like, welcome to the afterworld. Welcome to the desolated ruins of what was once known as Twitter. Here we must fight to survive, brutally cannibalizing each other in savage acts of inhuman rage. But yeah, I don't know. I still chat with folks on there, and we still connect on there.
Yeah.
And I feel like I wish we could take it back somehow. But anyway, you can find me out there, all these different places. Don't hesitate to reach out and say hello for any reason at all. Literally, if anybody out there listening is like, he sounded like a guy I wouldn't mind having a chat with, please reach out and chat. You never know. We might connect and find out that we're kin in our weirdness.
Awesome. So reach out, weirdos. And Michael, can you just take out saying the catchphrase of the show? Keep it
absolutely.
Weird, everybody?
Absolutely. Are you kidding me? Please, everybody out there, keep it weird.
Thank you for listening to Weird Games and Weirder People. If you'd like to keep up with the show, please subscribe to be notified when we release new episodes. If you'd like to support us, please leave a review or head on to ko-fi.com/WGNWP. See you next time, and remember, weird is the new wonderful.